From the Rafters of Rupp is brought to you by Bud's Gun Shop, Don Franklin's Auto Mall, Double Dogs, Friends of Coal, Hunt Brothers Pizza, Kentucky Farm Bureau.
Hello everybody and welcome to this edition of From the Rafters of Rupp. I'm Kyle Macy. If you've ever had the good fortune of attending a game in Rupp Arena, you probably know the Rafters are a prime location for jerseys and championship banners. To have your jersey hanging from the Rafters of Rupp is the ultimate when it comes to Kentucky basketball lore. The players, coaches, announcer, and equipment manager that have their jerseys hanging there have had legendary careers representing the blue and white. Throughout this series, we'll hear from members of that select group as they give you a first-hand account of the reasons why their jerseys hang from the Rafters of Rupp. In this episode, I visit with Sam Bowie, the multi-talented 7-footer from Lebanon, Pennsylvania, who overcame obstacles and injuries to become one of the Big Blue Nation's most favorite sons. Early on in our conversation, I asked Sam to recall the greatest influence in the early stages of his career, as well as his memories of developing into one of the top high school basketball prospects in the country.
Well, when I was growing up, the first person that had the most influential impact on me was my father. He was 6'11", so that's where my height comes from, being 7'1". He played for the Harlem Magicians, which were the Magicians before they were the Globetrotters. My father was actually he was my YMCA coach. I started my first organized basketball in the YMCA, and he happened to be the coach, and I'd be lying to you if I didn't say he ran a few extra plays for me. My biggest growth spurt was from my freshman year to my sophomore year. I was 6'3" as a freshman, I was 6'7" as a sophomore, I was 6'11" as a junior, and then 7 feet as a senior. At the end of my junior year, I remember I was like a 17-year-old kid going around Lebanon High School showing them that these colleges are showing interest in me. And you gotta remember, we got egos back then, and to think that somebody thought your skills were to the point where you could go for a free ride and get a free education and play basketball was a wonderful thing.
Sam averaged 28 points and 18 rebounds in his senior year at Lebanon High School, was a McDonald's All-American, a Parade All-American, and was named the 1979 National High School Player of the Year. We spoke about his recruitment, his decision to come to the University of Kentucky, and also about the other talented freshmen who joined Sam as members of the nation's #1 recruiting class.
Back when I was a senior, they allowed you 5 official school visits, and at that time I visited the University of Nevada, Las Vegas, the University of Maryland, Penn State, being that I was from Pennsylvania. I had a visit to Marquette University, but I canceled that recruiting trip because I knew I wanted to go to the University of Kentucky. When my plane landed at Bluegrass Airport, there was 1,000 or 2 people on the chain link fence waiting to see this 7-foot kid from Lebanon, Pennsylvania that was supposed to be this phenom. And I can still recall getting off the plane and seeing people from age 90 to 9 begging me to come to play for the University of Kentucky. So that's the first impression I remember, flying into Bluegrass Airport and just seeing the overwhelming support, and you can't turn that down. Going back to 1979, I believe that recruiting class is what you're seeing this year with the Calipari teams. We were listed as a phenom recruiting class, the #1 recruiting class in the country. When you talk about Dirk Minifield, he was a 6'3" guard here at a homegrown Lafayette High School, had won the state championship in that senior year that he played for Lafayette. Everyone wanted him, but it seemed like he was going to stay home, and which he did. Then we had a kid named Derek Horde from Bristol, Tennessee, was a 6'7", 6'8" forward that was classified as one of the better forwards in the country. And then we had Charles Hurt from Shelbyville, a local kid up the road who won the championship in 1978. What a wonderful, big, strong individual he was. We brought in a kid named Tom Heights from Indiana, and 6'9", 6'10", but that was the very beginning of what you see with these Calipari recruits.
We'll be right back with more of my conversation with Sam Bowie.
Hunt Brothers Pizza has been proudly serving communities across America for over 25 years. Download the Hunt Brothers Pizza app to find one of our 7,500 locations inside a convenience store near you.
Are you a sporting shooter, hunter, or looking for the best concealed carry option? Bud's Gun Shop and Range is Kentucky's largest selection of firearms, ammunition, and firearm accessories, located on Industry Road in Lexington.
In Sam's freshman year, the Cats compiled a 29-6 record and finished the season as the UPI's third-ranked team. The year ended, though, with a disappointing loss in the Mideast Regional semifinals at Rupp Arena. Sam averaged outstanding numbers as a freshman with 12 points and a team-leading 8 rebounds per game. He remembers the highs and lows of his first year as a Kentucky Wildcat.
At that time, I needed a guy like Joe B. Hall that was a disciplinarian because I thought I was better than ice cream. I needed some discipline. I needed some structure because of my size and my athletic ability, a lot of coaches looked the other direction and let me get away with things that I shouldn't have gotten away with. He taught me the yes sir, the no sir, the respect factor, and so my freshman year, I wasn't as good as I thought I was. My first time we traveled for the blue-white games and traveled around the state to these little small communities, I was amazed at how the gym was packed 2 hours before we got there. They were hanging on the rafters. There were people that all they wanted to do is touch you to say, I touched Sam Bowie. I mean, it was unbelievable. I've been blessed to play 11 years of professional basketball, but all my memories go back to the University of Kentucky. I was kind of walking on my toes after that game because I said, I'm a freshman. A guy named Mike Jaminski was a preseason All-American. He was their starting center, and they had a guy named Gene Banks who was second team All-American. And I was like, I just had 22 points, 17 rebounds, and my future is very, very bright. Needless to say, Coach Hall made sure that he pushed my ego down a little bit. Going in my freshman year, we were playing Notre Dame, and I got suspended, and the disciplinarian actions was being suspended for that Saturday national TV game against Notre Dame. And you got to remember, back then, we only played on 2 or 3 national TV games a year, so knowing that I was going to be disappointing not only my team, but my loved ones back in Pennsylvania, it was really, really a learning experience for me. And the hardest thing to do was when Coach Hall told me to call my mom and dad and tell them that I would not be playing that Saturday. But when I look back on it, it was the best thing that could have occurred to me because I needed some discipline. What I did was wrong. I've learned from my mistake, and I always tell Coach Hall, right now I'm a 55-year-old man, but every time I see him, I thank him and I tell him I love him and thanks for disciplining me, and I needed what he did that freshman year. Yeah, you know, when I look back, I remember playing Duke the second time, which was in the tournament, the NCAA tournament, and I wasn't effective at all. And when I look back on it, there was a couple of fouls that were just immature that I shouldn't even have put myself in that position. And when the game was over, I really felt horrible because we had people like yourself who had no more NCAA games. And if I would have performed anywhere up to my capabilities, I believe we would have advanced.
Sam's sophomore season started well. He led the Cats with averages of 17 points and 9 rebounds a game. The tandem of Sam Bowie and Melvin Turpin proved difficult for opposing teams to defend, and the Cats would rise as high as number 2 in all the major polls. However, as the season came to a close, the Cats were upset in the first round of the NCAA tournament. Sam faced adversity both on and off the court.
I always tell people when I was fortunate enough to play with a guy like Melvin Turpin, he made the game so much easier for me. So when I had the numbers that you had just mentioned, the double digits and rebounds and scoring, a lot of that had to do with Melvin's performance on the floor. They had to play me straight up, and a lot of times when you have a 7-footer, there's going to be a lot of weak side help, or they're crabbing down on you and you can't get shots off. But when you have a guy like Melvin, they had to play you straight up, and it was a lot easier. We played University of Alabama Birmingham earlier in our UKIT tournament and handled them very easily. When we matched them in the NCAA tournament, I think the mindset, starting with myself, because things came very easy to us the way we performed and beat them earlier. But we went into that game with the wrong mindset, and I still remember walking in the locker room afterwards as if, is this reality? I mean, somebody wake me up, this can't be true, because we knew we were a much better team than that team. And after my sophomore year, averaging 17 points and almost 10 rebounds, I was told that the Philadelphia 76ers had like the 6th pick in the draft and that they would consider drafting me. And I called my mother to tell her, hey Mom, I'm leaving school early. And she said, no, you're not. You're staying there. You're going to be the first one in our family to get your undergraduate degree. And I hung up the phone, decided I wasn't even going to consider leaving after my sophomore year. That summer is when I developed a stress fracture in my leg. A month later, my father, at the age of 45, Coach Leonard Hamilton, came and knocked on the dormitory door and told me my father had just passed from a cyst on his lung that burst and caused internal hemorrhage. And so I go from thinking I'm leaving school early to play pro ball, to do things for your loved ones, to I got a broken leg, I'm at a funeral for my father, and it went from a high to a very low. I went and got an x-ray, and the x-ray at the time showed what they called back then a stress fracture, a stress reaction. At that time, that was the very beginnings. They only had 42 cases in the United States and North America with this so-called stress reaction. There was 42 cases, 41 of them were with ballet dancers. I was the first basketball player that they were looking at. Well, we thought that we would put the leg in a cast for 6 weeks, it would heal, we'd go on with my career. But every time they would take the cast off, they would see that the healing process was not to the point where they were comfortable. So then they told me we were just gonna redshirt me. So I said, that's fine. I get redshirted. The next year, we come to find out that they're gonna have to do another bone graft surgery, and I'm gonna miss another year, which means there's no more redshirt, you just lose your junior year.
Kentucky Farm Bureau Insurance, big on commitment.
We never set out to be the largest auto dealer in Kentucky. He just set out to provide people reliable vehicles and great customer service. And for the last 50 years, that's what we've done.
Sam was sidelined for 2 entire seasons and dealt with the uncertainty of his basketball future. Sam shared with me his thoughts and feelings about this difficult time of his life, then turned his attention to his senior year. His return to the court, facing Louisville for the first time in a regular season matchup in more than 50 years, and the Cats' 1984 run to the NCAA Final Four.
The toughest part about sitting on the sidelines was the mental aspect of it. It was a long, long 2 years of sitting on the sidelines and people coming up, patting me on the back and saying they're praying for me, they wish me the best. But when you're 19 years old, it was devastating. Well, when you're a player, as you well know, you have to have confidence in yourself. And that was the first time in my life that I started doubting whether or not my basketball career would go on, not professionally, but after sitting out 2 years, I didn't know if this was going to be a 3-year ordeal. If it's a 3-year ordeal, I'm done. Well, when I come back my senior year, I was nowhere near the player I was as a sophomore. A lot of people say, what if, and I've never been one to say what if, but it was unfortunate that the injuries occurred, but at the same time, when I look back on it, I was somewhat of a shell of a player that I had a chance to be. Going back to my senior year when we opened the scheduling where we were gonna play Louisville on a regular basis after 40-some years, or I don't know the exact number, but they hadn't played each other forever. That atmosphere was electric, and I'll never forget that me being from Pennsylvania, I didn't know the real rivalry between Kentucky and the University of Louisville, in the sense that Kentucky always felt like they were the varsity and the Louisville team was the JV, and we had nothing to gain by scheduling a game against them. So Louisville come at us with an attitude that we're gonna show they've been afraid to play us, that's why they haven't scheduled us. And I remember Coach Hall, he has never ever, And I never played in a NCAA championship game like you did with him, and I've never been in a huddle like you, but I specifically remember him in the locker room saying, "You will win this ball game. This one you will win." So it meant a lot. Well, my senior year, on our way to the Final Four, we played Illinois in Rupp Arena to go to the Final Four. And I remember I blocked a shot at the end of the game. We were up 2 points. And I believe in the left corner, I blocked a shot with Illinois shooting it that had an opportunity to take it to overtime. And I remember the crowd just erupting because we were going to the Final Four. And I remember looking at the schedule and seeing that first round was going to be against Patrick Ewing and the Hoyas, Hoya Paranoia. They were known for their defense. Well, when we got out to Seattle, Kentucky fans everywhere. I thought we were in Lexington, Kentucky, but the one thing I'll remember about that ball game, we were up at halftime and we played poorly, and Coach Hall was furious. He was furious that we played the way we did, and I believe we were up 3, 4, 5 points at half, but the second half we came out and we shot 3 for 33 as a team, and needless to say, it was a nightmare. It was a nightmare. When that game was over and we lost to Georgetown in the Final Four, the one thing that I'll always remember after that game is I was the last player to take my uniform off. Bill Kitely, as you well know, him and his crew would always go around collecting the socks, the jocks, the uniforms, and I was sitting in my stall and I remember Bill Kitely coming by and saying, "Okay, big guy, you need to give me that uniform." And I just remember sitting in my locker room thinking, I'll never wear this uniform again, and that was one of the reasons why I couldn't take it off.
Following Sam's senior year, in which he participated in the NCAA's most prestigious event, the Final Four, he was named a consensus All-American and was selected in the first round of the 1984 draft with the number 2 overall pick by the Portland Trail Blazers. But Sam's good fortune would again run into obstacles on the injury front. We discussed his draft selection ahead of Michael Jordan, Sam's NBA career, and the direction of his life after his playing days were over.
30 years after being drafted before Michael Jordan, I still hear the comments and the whispers in regards to how stupid was Portland for drafting Bowie over Jordan. But the thing they fail to realize is nobody knew Michael was going to be the Michael that he turned out to be. And the most important thing was, at that time, the Portland Trail Blazers had 2 NBA two guards, a guy named Jim Paxson and another guy named Clyde Drexler. They were already on the roster, so our 2 guard was already settled. They didn't have a center, and they drafted for what their needs were. Well, when I was drafted in '84, I wound up playing in 79 out of the 82 regular season games, no health issues. My second year, I played 5 or 6 ball games, and we were playing the Milwaukee Bucks. And Jerome Kersey fell on me. I was laying on the floor after going after a shot, and his whole body happened to fall on the leg at the perfect spot and fractured my tibia. At that time, they wound up putting 6 screws in the tibia, thinking that I would rehab and come back the following year. Well, I rehabbed, I did come back the following year, and 20-some ball games into the season, the screws in the leg fatigued. They snapped, and they had to go back in, and I missed another year. My last year with the Lakers, Magic Johnson was our coach, and Jerry West was our general manager. And as you well know, when you're in the pros, you usually have meetings before you go different directions. And at that time, Jerry was gonna get a guy by the name of Shaquille O'Neal from Orlando to come out to the Lakers, and he wanted me to be a backup center to play 16, 17 minutes a game, and he was willing to pay me $2 million a year for 2 years, which, if my arithmetic is correct, that's $4 million just to play 18 minutes a game, and some games you might not even play that. But what Jerry West didn't understand was I had to practice against him every day. Rather than play against him twice a year, there's no way I was going to practice against Shaq with my legs and the feelings that I had with all the surgeries. I just didn't think physically that I would be able to get through the year, but I was elated that they thought my skills were to the point where they wanted to sign me to play 2 more years. Yeah, after doing a little broadcasting, I had always been involved in the standardbred game. My first purchase of horses was 1984 when I got drafted. I used to always buy 2 or 3 yearlings a year and always had a love for the harness game. So after doing the broadcasting, I spent more time and more involvement in kind of overseeing that, and to this day I love it.
The coal industry's had a big impact on my life. My grandfather was a coal miner, my father was a coal miner. Coal is the largest driving force in our local economy. That's why I'm a friend of coal.
Double Dogs is a great place to eat. In a single word, delicious.
Through his stellar basketball career, Sam faced numerous challenges and setbacks. He recounts the highlights of his career and the pride he now feels as a lifelong member of the Big Blue Nation.
The most remembered and most emotional time was my senior year, running through the hoop, bawling. I mean bawling, crying, knowing that I didn't care if 25,000 people saw me like I was. I was a mess, because you realize you were blessed to play in a situation that not many will be able to do. Yeah, when I look back on my career here at the University of Kentucky, I'm very proud and very pleased that I was skilled to the point where I could play for an institution like this, but I also feel bad because I would love to go down to Rupp to see a banner hanging with your 1978 banner. I can take the injuries and I can take the fact that I wasn't able to be the player that I was supposed to be, but it'd be a lot easier to accept that if there was a banner down there at Rupp Arena. I think the thing that I'm most proud about of being a Kentucky Wildcat is I feel like I gave as much love to the Commonwealth as the Commonwealth gave me. After being coached and disciplined by Coach Hall, I like to think that I turned out to be a good citizen. I'm 55 years old now, and I walk around the state and they still think I'm on the roster. So if you do the right thing here at the University of Kentucky, you will get rewarded.
Sam Bowie was the National High School Player of the Year, a 3-time All-SEC performer, 2-time All-American, member of the 1980 USA Olympic team, 1,000-point club member at the University of Kentucky, and the number 2 overall pick for the Portland Trail Blazers in the 1984 NBA Draft. Sam's number 31 hangs in the Rafters of Rupp to remind the Big Blue Nation of the illustrious career of the 7-footer from Lebanon, Pennsylvania. Ironically, Sam's number 31 was the 31st of the current 43 jerseys that hang from the Rafters of Rupp. Thanks for joining me, everybody. Until next time, when we hear more tales from the Rafters of Rupp.
From the Rafters of Rupp was brought to you by Bud's Gun Shop, Don Franklin's Auto Mall, Double Dogs, Friends of Coal, Hunt Brothers Pizza, Kentucky Farm Bureau, and by Rafferty's.